I used to think I was the king of my high school. I had the charm, the strength, and the attention. Teachers praised me. Classmates followed me. Even the school principal called me a natural leader. But there's one thing I did back then that still haunts me to this day. I bullied a boy named Uche. Not just once, every single day. He wasn't like the rest of us. He was quiet, always carrying a book, never raising his voice. I thought he was weak. And in a school where strength was everything, weakness was unforgivable. I made his life miserable. I mocked him in front of the class. I tripped him in the corridors. I once spilled his lunch on purpose just to get a laugh. And every time he just picked himself up, brushed off the dust, and walked away without saying a word. He never fought back, never told the teachers, never even cried. It drove me mad. I didn't know then what I know now, that the quiet ones, the ones who endure, are sometimes the ones fate has marked for something greater. Years passed, life changed. I forgot about Uche. Until one day, I walked into a boardroom in Lagos to lead a major project. And sitting at the head of the table was the same boy I once humiliated, except he wasn't a boy anymore. He was confident, powerful, and he was my boss. This is the story of how I beat my classmates every day, and how life, with all its strange sense of justice, made me answer to him. Back then, I went to a government school in a dusty town called Umudike. It wasn't anything fancy. Faded yellow walls, rusted zinc roofs, and a bell that was really just an old car rim hanging from a tree. But that place, that's where I ruled. Every morning we stood in straight lines on the assembly ground, uniforms half ironed, sandals dusty from the red sand. I was the class prefect, not because I was the smartest, but because I had presence. I spoke loud, walked proud, and people listened. The teachers trusted me. I brought order. I punished noisemakers. I was the one who reminded them to stand for the national anthem. To them, I was leadership material, but I wasn't a leader. I was a bully. And my favorite target? Uche. He was the opposite of everything I was. Always quiet, always alone. Instead of a football, he carried notebooks. While the rest of us laughed and joked during break time, Uche would be under the mango tree, reading one science book or another. He barely spoke unless he was answering a question, and even then his voice was soft, like he didn't want to offend the air. He wore his uniform neatly, shoes polished, always punctual. To the teachers, he was a model student, but to me, he was a punching bag. I didn't need a reason. If he answered the question better than me, I mocked him. If he ignored me, I made sure he regretted it. And everyone played along. Classmates laughed, girls giggled, even some teachers looked away. Because in our world, the loud ones set the tone, and the quiet ones, they were just background noise. But what none of us realized was that Uche wasn't trying to shine in school. He was building something quietly, slowly, without asking anyone for permission. And while I thought I was on top of the world, I was actually standing still. If you asked anyone in school back then, they'd probably say I was just a tough prefect, strict, disciplined, respected. But the truth is, I picked on Uche every single day. It became a routine. In the morning, I'd call out his name during assembly roll call with extra emphasis, just to get a laugh. Uche the professor, I'd say, did you invent anything new last night? Sometimes I'd snatch his notes and wave them around like I was mocking some national science experiment. Other times, I'd kick his desk from behind during lessons just to see if I could make him spill ink on his neatly written pages. One day, I accidentally tripped him in front of everyone. His books went flying, the entire class burst into laughter, and I stood over him with a smirk. He looked up at me. Didn't say a word, just picked up his books, wiped the dust off, and returned to his seat, like nothing happened. Another time, he was sitting outside eating jollof rice from a plastic bowl. I walked by, kicked the bowl clean out of his hands. The food scattered across the red dirt like spilled secrets. He stared at it for a few seconds. Then he looked at me and said quietly, "One day you might be eating because of me." I laughed in his face. "Me? You? Never." The boys around me roared, but something about the way he said it, calm, certain, it stuck with me. And I didn't understand it then. But looking back now, I think that was the moment something shifted. Not for him, but for me. See, Uchi wasn't weak, he wasn't scared, he just had nothing to prove to people like me. And while I used every moment to tear him down in front of others, he never once gave me the satisfaction of reacting. That silence, it wasn't cowardice, it was control. And that scared me more than I could admit at the time. He was doing something I couldn't understand. He was quietly becoming everything I claimed to be: disciplined, focused, respected, just without the noise. But in my eyes, he was still just the weird, bookish kid who wouldn't fight back. I had no idea that every insult, every slap, every spilled meal was just sharpening a blade I'd one day fall on. There's a kind of strength that doesn't shout, it doesn't push people around, it doesn't need to be seen. That was Uche's strength. While I was busy being loud and feared, Uche was building something nobody noticed, not even the teachers. He spent his time after school in the science lab, staying behind when everyone else had gone home. Most students just saw him as the kid obsessed with wires and dusty textbooks. But one day something happened that changed how everyone looked at him. Our school was hosting a regional science fair. The government was coming, journalists too. It was a big deal. The principal wanted us to show the best our school had. Of course, I teamed up with my friends and put together a flashy cardboard project: a solar powered fan that only worked when someone stood behind it, blowing air through a pipe. It looked impressive if you didn't look too closely. Uche? He walked alone, quietly. He didn't talk about his project. He didn't ask for help. While we were busy spray painting our model silver and blue, he was collecting old tins, charcoal, used plastic bottles, junk really. On the day of the fair, he unveiled a water purification system made from those scraps. No shiny packaging, no slogans, no team cheerleaders. But it worked. They poured dirty water in one end, and clear, drinkable water came out the other side. The judges froze. One of them asked, "You built this by yourself?" Uche nodded. "With things people usually throw away." That sentence hit different. The judges clapped. The principal beamed with pride. The other schools whispered his name like he'd just done magic. Meanwhile, my shiny fan, it stopped spinning halfway through the demonstration. Uche won the scholarship, got a handshake from the regional commissioner, a photo in the newspaper. And me? For the first time, I wasn't the one in the spotlight. I stood there watching everyone surround him. The same boy I used to call worthless. And you know what stung the most? He didn't gloat. He didn't even look in my direction. He packed up his project and left, like it was just another day. That's when I realized something. Uchi wasn't trying to prove anything. He was just being who he was meant to be. And that was the kind of power I never understood back then. By the time we reached SS3, everything was about the future. YIC exams, university dreams, or family plans. For most of us, it was the first time we were being asked the question, so what's next? I thought I had it all figured out. My uncle had already promised me a place in his construction company. Why waste time with books, he told me, when you already have bloodline connections? It sounded good. It felt safe. I told everyone I'd soon be managing major building sites and living in Abuja or Lagos. Uche? He didn't talk much about his plans, but everyone knew he got that scholarship, a full ride to a top university in Lagos to study software engineering. While I celebrated with friends, Uche spent graduation day quietly, taking photos with a few classmates and his mother, a petite woman who sold palm oil at the village market. She didn't wear lace or high heels, but the way she held Uche's hand in that photo, it was like she was holding the future. After graduation, our paths split completely. I went straight into business. My uncle gave me a position managing supplies and logistics. I wore nice shirts, held meetings, backed instructions. I posted selfies in the office on Instagram, showing off a lifestyle that looked like success. Even though half the time I barely understood the spreadsheets in front of me, Uche disappeared into the noise of Lagos. I heard nothing about him for years, but word got around that he graduated with first class honors, won a Tech Innovation Award, and landed a job in a rising software company. I didn't care much. At least that's what I told myself. But somewhere deep inside, I always wondered if he remembered me. Not as a classmate, not as a friend, but as the boy who once spilled his lunch in the sand and laughed. Life moved on. Promotions came, I grew into my role. I learned to manage staff, talk to clients, delegate tasks. I felt accomplished. Until one Monday morning, I was called into a boardroom in Lagos for a tech partnership meeting. A big deal. We were launching a new estate and our firm was collaborating with a digital solutions company. I walked in early, dressed sharp, briefcase in hand, ready to lead. But when the door opened and the project lead walked in, my heart stopped. It was him, Uche. I didn't recognize him at first. The man who walked into that boardroom looked nothing like the Uche I remembered. He was taller now, lean but firm, dressed in a crisp grey suit. His shoulders were squared, his eyes focused, and he moved like someone who belonged exactly where he was. He walked straight to the head of the table and said, Merci, good morning everyone. My name is Uke Nwanko, Chief Technology Officer of DigiRoot Systems. I'll be leading the tech integration on this project. That name hit me like a slap. I froze. My chest tightened. My mind raced back to jollof rice on the ground, to laughter, to silence, to spilled ink and morning roll calls. I stared at him, waiting, hoping that he wouldn't recognize me, but he did. His eyes met mine and he smiled politely. Obina, isn't it? From Umudike Secondary. The room turned to look at me, impressed that we knew each other. I forced a smile and nodded. Yeah, it's been a long time. He shook my hand like nothing had happened, like we weren't once trapped in a twisted dance of power and humiliation. But I could feel it. He hadn't forgotten. He just wasn't holding it against me. That made it worse. He started the presentation, clicking through slides with data, timelines, deliverables, back-end requirements. He spoke confidently, clearly, with no stammer, no hesitation. His team, full of sharp young professionals, took notes as he spoke. They respected him, admired him. Some even looked up to him like he was a mentor. And me? I sat there drowning in my own silence, barely hearing a word. He wasn't the same Uche. He was evolved. I kept waiting for a moment, a small sign that he would humiliate me in return or expose me in front of everyone. But he never did. He stayed professional, focused, cold even, but never cruel. That's when I understood something no one had ever taught me in school. Real power doesn't retaliate, it just rises. This man, this quiet, bookish, overlooked boy from Umudike, now held my career in his hands, not because he wanted revenge, but because he didn't need it. After that meeting, I didn't go straight home. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, engine off, windows rolled up, just staring at the dashboard. Memories came flooding in like water breaking through a dam. Every insult, every laugh, every moment I treated Uche like he didn't matter. It all came back, but this time with no audience to cheer me on. And I hated how small it made me feel. Back then, I thought bullying him made me strong. I thought respect came from fear. But sitting across from him in that conference room, seeing what he'd built, hearing the way people looked up to him, I realized how wrong I was. I wanted to believe I had changed. I had matured, grown into a man, but deep down I was still that same boy, terrified of someone who didn't need to fight to win. Days passed, and our teams continued working together. I had to take instructions from him, attend meetings he led, present reports that he would approve or reject. And each time he was polite, but distant, professional, but cold. He never once mentioned our pasts, never threw it in my face. But that silence, it was heavier than any insult he could have given. One evening, after a long strategy session, I stayed behind. I waited until everyone had left, then walked up to him. My throat was dry and my ego was screaming at me to turn back. But I said it anyway. Ushe, I don't know if you remember everything I did back in school. He looked up slowly. His eyes studied me for a second, then he nodded. I remember. I swallowed hard. I was terrible to you. I bullied you. I'm sorry, man. Truly. He paused, then he smiled, just a little. Not out of mockery, not out of revenge, just a quiet, knowing smile. I know, he said, but that was school. We were boys, now we're men. Let's act like it. And just like that, the weight lifted. He didn't need to humiliate me to get even. He didn't need to shout or remind me of who I used to be. He'd already won, not over me, but over everything I represented back then. After that conversation, something shifted between us. We still weren't friends, not really, but there was a mutual respect now, not built on fear or reputation or forced admiration, but on experience, on the shared understanding that life had taken us down very different roads to get to the same room. Working with Uche after that became easier, not because he changed, but because I did. I started listening more, speaking less, and learning from the same man I once laughed at. There was one day, months later, during a company event, a group of junior staff were asking Uche questions about his journey, how he became a CTO, how he built his reputation, how he handled failure, and he told them something I'll never forget. He said, easy, needless start. He said, in school, I wasn't the strongest or the loudest. I got mocked a lot, but I knew who I wanted to become. I knew my silence had a purpose, so I focused on becoming better, not louder. He didn't say my name, he didn't need to. That moment, I looked around at the young people listening to him, people who saw him as a mentor, a leader, and inspiration, and I felt proud, not of myself, but of him. Later that year, we launched the estate project successfully. Our companies even partnered again. Eventually, Uche and I co led a youth mentorship program for students in rural schools, including one not far from Umudike. We didn't talk much about the past, but every now and then, when we'd pass by a group of noisy schoolboys teasing each other or showing off, we'd exchange a look. And it was always the same unspoken message. We were there, but look where we are now. I learned something powerful from all this, something I wish someone had told me when I was younger. Strength isn't how hard you can hit, it's how much grace you can carry when you could hit back, but choose not to. Looking back now, I realize the boy I used to laugh at taught me one of the most important lessons of my life. He didn't need revenge, he didn't need to clap back or get even or throw everything I did back in my face because his success was the response. His growth was the answer. His silence was power. Sometimes life doesn't give you the justice you expect. It gives you something better. It gives you perspective. So if you're listening to this and thinking about someone you looked down on or someone who's looking down on you, just know this: people grow, tables turn, and the quiet ones, the ones everyone underestimates, they're often the ones life is preparing for the loudest comeback. I used to beat my classmate every day. Now, I take notes when he speaks. And that right there is the beauty and the irony of grow, of course. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't.